Which one of these is the right plot twist for your book? Or better yet, don't choose just one, choose 2 or 3 of them. These are 8 categories of plot twists that you can use in your book to shock and to surprise your readers. And there are spoiler alerts galore in this video, so if you hear a title that you don't want to know the ending to, then just, close your ears and hum to yourself for 10 seconds. The first category of plot twist is the identity reveal. This is when a character reveals that they are not who everyone thought they were. Now, why this works so well is it forces the reader to sort of mentally reread the whole book and realize like, oh, everything I thought I knew about this story is completely false. A great example of this would be Dennis Lehane's Shutter Island. There's a U.S. Marshal investigating a disappearance at a hospital for the criminally insane, and then you learn that this Marshal is not who he thinks he is. Another classic example would be Sixth Sense with Bruce Willis. We think we know who Bruce Willis is, but at the end of the story we realize, oh, wow, we didn't know anything at all. Or another really example would be Colson Whitehead's Nickel Boys. This is an interesting one because it involves the narrator. Who is the narrator? Who is the person telling us this story? We think it is the same person as the POV character, Elwood Curtis, but then at the end of the story, there's this big surprise when we realize, no, who was telling us the story was a different person entirely. Now, what is the danger of having an identity reveal in your book? Well, the danger is that it's the most commonly used sort of gotcha technique, and so readers can feel a little cheated or roll their eyes and be like, oh, I've seen this 1,000 times before. I think the trick is to make it absolutely not predictable, right? If people guess, oh, I saw that one coming, this whole technique will fall apart. But another more complex strategy that you can use is the moment you reveal this information to the characters and to the reader, have those happen at different times. For instance, if you reveal it to the reader first, then there's a little bit of tension as the reader is looking forward to when the characters actually realize it. Let's move on to the second category of plot twists you might want to use for your book, and it is number 2, the relationship reversal. So this is when the dynamic between two characters inverts or switches or something. Maybe a friend becomes an enemy, maybe an enemy becomes a friend. I will say that the deeper of a relationship that the two characters already have, the bigger the surprise. If they don't have much of a relationship, then it's like the reader's gonna be like, they didn't really know each other that well anyway. So look at Ian McEwan's Atonement. Brioni tells us the relationship between Robbie and Cecilia is one way, and we think, oh, like, that's what their relationship is. And then we realize, no, she is not a reliable narrator and their relationship is completely different. Or if you want the absolute classic example of this, go to The Empire Strikes Back when Luke realizes that Darth Vader is his father. I do think the best relationship reversals are obvious in hindsight, so that when a reader reads your book for a second time, we should all be so blessed to have second-time readers, they will see those carefully planted clues and realize, oh, like, it was there all along, I just didn't notice it. A second rule I think you should follow for this type of thing is don't force it. There's a difference between following sort of your organic, natural storytelling path and injecting plot twists to meet this artificial conflict quota. So don't be a quota writer. Like, your readers will definitely sniff out that kind of fakery. And hey, if you're interested in joining BOOKFOX LAB, we have been learning how to activate characters, how to create suspense in your novel, how to plot your book using the Bookfox story scaffold, and also how to handle time or bend time in your fiction. Come join us if you want help with your book. The link is in the description. This next point is probably my favorite plot twist. It is number 3, the unreliable narrator unmasking. So this is when the character telling your story reveals they've been lying, they've been omitting or slanting the truth, or maybe they just don't have a good grasp on reality. So many fantastic examples of this one, but let's start with Colleen Hoover's Verity. There is a horrifying manuscript that's found that details all sorts of abuse and murder of children. But surprise, 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 it was all fictional and none of it was actually real. The person who was telling us that story was unreliable. Another example, Jan Martel's The Life of Pi. You think it's a pretty straightforward story of survival throughout the whole book, and then you reach the very end once he finally gets off that raft and you realize, oh, wait a second. There's a whole other different way to read this story. And maybe the person telling us the story was telling us a fictionalized version. Another great example is Agatha Christie's The Murder of Roger Ackroyd. We learn that the detective narrating the story might be a little complicit in the actual crimes themselves, which is quite a plot twist. If you're trying to do this, I think what's absolutely key is make sure you have character motivation. Without motivation, there's no reason for an unreliable narrator to exist. Why are they being being unreliable? What did they get out of being unreliable? I think it feels very gimmicky if you just want them to be unreliable because it's going to be, a shock to the reader. That's not good enough motivation. You need strong motivation. One decision you need to make is decide whether this is going to be a complete secret until a big reveal, or whether you're going to start dropping clues so the reader starts to wonder, like, is this character reliable? And sort of you gradually bring them to an understanding, like, I don't think this person's telling the truth. And by the way, someone said in the comments section that they've been watching my videos for 6 months and only now just subscribed. Please don't wait 6 months. Be a little faster than that. Subscribe right now. Subscribe today. And if you've already subscribed, please hit that like button. Not a lot of writers think of this next plot twist, but it is a genuinely smart and good one. It is number 4. The hidden motivation. This is when a character's true goals are revealed, which makes the reader recontextualize all their previous actions. Everything that they've done, all the actions, those stay the same, but why they did those things changes. Let's go to an animated film for this one. Look at Frozen. Prince Hans appears to be the romantic lead, but as time goes on, you realize, he has a hidden motivation that he just wants to marry in order to gain access to the throne. So no, he doesn't really love her. Yes, he's willing to let her die. All he's after is power. Another good example would be The Reader by Bernard Schlink. Michael, as a teenager, has a love affair with Hannah, and later on, Hannah's put on trial for war crimes. Now, she doesn't defend herself at all, so she gets this super long prison sentence. And so we're wondering, what exactly were her motivations? Why didn't she defend herself? And we learn, and this is the big, huge surprise twist, that the reason she didn't defend herself is that she was illiterate and she couldn't read the papers that would have exonerated her, so she just went ahead and signed them anyway. And this meant she got the harshest punishment possible. Now, when you have hidden motivation like this, make sure that the revealed motivation is deeper and more significant than the surface motivation. The surface motivation, what you tell the reader. In Frozen, we see a moral contrast. We think, Hans, perhaps he's genuinely in love or something, and then learn, no, it's very despicable. He's just after power and money and the throne. With the reader, it's a contrast in terms of the weight of motivations. We think that maybe she's locked up out of pride, but then it ends up being something really trivial. She just doesn't want to admit to anyone she can't read. If you are writing something with a lot of world building, like fantasy or sci-fi or post-apocalyptic or something like that, this next one is for you. It is number 5. The world isn't what it seems. This is a plot twist where the rules, the setting, or the nature of reality shifts beneath the reader's feet. Look at The Giver by Lewis Lowry. Here's this utopia where everyone's happy, yay. Oh wait, release is a euphemism for killing babies and old people. Or look at Never Let Me Go by Kazuo Ishiguro. We have a nice boarding school with all these nice teenagers, and then we realize that they're clones, and their body parts will slowly be harvested for the originals until the clones die. So here are a couple guidelines if you're going to try this type of plot twist. 1, sometimes it's a good idea to have the characters actually know what sort of world that they're living in, but they're in denial for some reason. And this is the strategy in Never Let Me Go. Tommy and Ruth totally know who they are. It's the reader who's in the dark, and they slowly come to realize, that's what's going on in this world. I think another really interesting thing about Never Let Me Go is there's not one big gotcha moment where we realize, this world is completely different. It's more like a slow unfurling. There's very tiny clues that are dropped that make us realize, this isn't a normal boarding school in modern day England. No, there's something strange going on here. So all these details accumulate until finally the reader's I think I know what's going on, and that's horrifying. Now, there's one last thing that you absolutely have to know if you're going to use this twist. 99% of the time, this twist is not a climax. A lot of the other twists we've discussed in this video are a climax. I feel like this twist works better when it's a third of the way through the book or halfway through the book, because what we really want to see is what the characters do in response to this new world. All right, now it's time for number 6. Number 6 is the moral inversion. This is when a good character turns evil or an evil character turns good. Essentially, character change as a kind of plot twist. A good example of this would be Delilah Owens' Where the Crawdad Sings. We spend the whole book cheering for this wrongly accused outcast who's being persecuted by these prejudiced townspeople, and then realize at the end that our entire moral framework, who we thought was good in the book and who we thought was evil in the book, it just gets completely reversed. Another good example is Shirley Jackson's We Have Always Lived in the Castle. There is a character you think is pretty innocent and good, and in the end, it turns out that you are completely wrong. There's a huge moral inversion. Or look at Six of Crows by Leigh Bardugo. At the beginning, there is a very responsible merchantman who, gives them this assignment, this heist assignment. But at the end, we realize, oh, the merchant that we thought was a decent, upstanding citizen ends up being completely wicked and evil. So here are 3 tips if you want to use a moral inversion in your own book. First of all, it's okay to have sort of a complexity of moral judgment. In Where the Crawdads Sing, it's not as though we think that Kaya is a horrible person now. We understand her motivations for why she committed the horrible crime that she committed. Her boyfriend Chase was this predator who physically and sexually abused her, so it's a lot more gray area than like she turns from straight hero into straight villain. It's like, well, I mean, yeah, she did something horrible, but we understand why. A second thing to remember is that there are some things that don't count as moral inversions. If you give a villain a sad origin story so we can better understand them as characters, I don't think that's a moral inversion. That's character building, but it doesn't make what they do any less evil. On the flip side, if you have a hero do one bad thing, I don't think that's a moral inversion either. You're just showing them as a complete human being, and yeah, people have some moral flaws. My last tip, if you're going to pull off a moral inversion, is to make sure there is the greatest distance possible between who a character is at the beginning of the story and the moral inversion who they turn out to be by the end. The greater the contrast, the bigger the surprise for the reader. This next one is pretty tricky. It is definitely an advanced technique. It is number 7. The time shift. This is when information about the past or, about the future reframes how we think about the present moment story. You can do this through flashbacks, through letters that they find, or from people telling a story. One example would be Beloved by Toni Morrison. We have this gradual revelation of why Safed did what she did when she killed her daughter. A second example would be The Sense of an Ending by Julian Barnes. We go back into the past and learn that the way he told the story, it's sort of some self-serving revisions that he made. And this brings up a really interesting point. How many twists can you have in your book? A lot of people think one big twist is enough to carry a story, and yeah, that can be true. But, The Sense of an Ending actually has 3 huge twists at the end, and all of them work. So I think there is no limit on the amount of twists that you can have as long as all of them are justified twists that maybe the reader didn't see coming and that when they're given, the reader loves them. So a little misstep that you should be aware of is that not every character past is going to be this type of time twist, right? There has to be something unusual or surprising about the character's past, which inverts everything we know about them for it actually to count as a twist. Now, I want to give you one really cool example of where something about the future ends up affecting how we interpret this present moment. There's a story called Story of Your Life by Ted Chiang. It was made into a movie called Arrival, and in it, a woman is seeing what she thinks are flashbacks. Well, surprise, surprise, they actually end up being flash forwards. So she's seeing the future. She's seeing what's going to happen. And when we learn that as the reader, it changes everything about the story. Only in certain genres of story, like sci-fi, can you get away with that sort of futuristic stuff affecting the present. 90% of the time, it's past events affecting the present. Okay, and now it's time for the very last plot twist. Number 8. The perspective flip. This is when we've been getting the story from one perspective, and then the story switches and the story starts getting told from another perspective, which casts everything into a new light. It doesn't change what happens per se, but it does change how we interpret all those events. An example of this would be Gone Girl by Gillian Flynn. First half of the book is told from the husband's perspective, then there's a perspective shift, and the second half of the book is told from the wife's perspective. And when we start hearing from the wife, it is a huge game changer in terms of plot. It is so surprising. It is the biggest twist. Another example would be An American Marriage by Tayari Jones. So the whole book alternates between the husband and wife in a marriage, between Roy and Celestial. And what's interesting about this technique is every time the perspective shifts, our loyalties shift as well. Oh, we think we're on the husband's side. Oh, no, wait, now we're on the wife's side because we're hearing things from her point of view. What I like about this technique is that it completely dissolves the whole categories of protagonist and antagonist, because those are constantly shifting depending on who's telling the story. If you try this technique, what's absolutely key is that you should be referring to the same events and just have both characters have wildly different interpretations of what happened in that event. Maybe they're even telling the same period of time, but the story feels completely different. And it creates this little mystery for the reader to solve as they try to figure out what actually happened. If you want help with your writing, make sure to check out BookFox Lab in the description below. And thanks for watching, everybody. I really appreciate the tens of thousands of you who watch every single one of my videos. I'm glad to be with you on this journey, and I am cheering you on. Happy writing.